there are some big mistakes you could be making when it comes to truth and reconciliation. Are you making any of these mistakes in your truth and reconciliation with Indigenous people? Really, Mallory, how is that you could do something wrong in truth and reconciliation? Let me tell you, there is. Hi there, I'm Mallory, and I help Indigenous people and allies learn about Indigenous culture and Native teachings and how to make real progress toward truth and reconciliation. Are you someone who's trying to help support Indigenous people and communities heal from the past traumas and current effects of colonization, Indian residential schools, and having the Indigenous culture stripped and attempted to be erased by leaders of this country? Whether you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous, you're probably someone who is wanting to help make progress in Indigenous truth and reconciliation. The last thing that you want is for all of your efforts to be having a reverse effect, be harming, offending people around you, or to be creating issues for yourself that aren't helping, they're actually hurting. Geesh, this unfortunately can happen, which is why I created this video on truth and reconciliation mistakes that you could be making and how to avoid making these mistakes. Now, these are the top 10 mistakes you might be making in truth and reconciliation. These could be made by you if you are an Indigenous person or if you're non-Indigenous. And making these errors do not discriminate whether you're a Native person or not. I've listed these 10 mistakes from 10th to the first biggest mistake, and we're gonna start with number 10. So the 10th mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is stereotyping Indigenous people. This might seem obvious, but sometimes stereotyping can be as simple as making assumptions or associations that will limit your understanding of the group of people. Stereotypes aren't just how people look or how they live their lives. For example, some people believe that Indigenous people hate or don't like non-Indigenous people. That's just an example. Now, some of the risks of stereotyping in your truth and reconciliation efforts are that it can cause issues in your personal mindset and how you learn and how you build relationships. Because you're gonna go into relationship building with your guard up, thinking something assumptive like Indigenous people don't like me because I'm non-Native. Stereotyping can happen if you're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. It does not discriminate. Some Indigenous people believe this as well, that Indigenous people look a certain way, think a certain way, maybe not like them or whatever. Instead, what you wanna do is learn about the diversity of Indigenous people and the differences that can help you overcome this mistake. Now, number 9. The 9th mistake you might be making in your truth and reconciliation efforts is not setting intentions for your efforts. What are you hoping to achieve in your truth and reconciliation efforts? What are you trying to get out of it? Who are you trying to help? For example, do I want to just learn or do I want to participate in something? The risk of not setting intention in your truth and reconciliation efforts are that you could end up feeling unaccomplished because you didn't achieve a goal or you didn't set a goal in the first place. This applies to anything in your life. So instead, what you want to do is set an intention for what you want to do with your truth and reconciliation. The 8th mistake you might be making in your truth and reconciliation efforts is thinking that you have to be an activist. For example, if I'm going to be involved in truth and reconciliation, I have to show up to the marches and the rallies and the protests. This is a mistake. And the risk of making this mistake and thinking that you have to be an activist in your truth and reconciliation efforts is that you'll have a mindset that can cause you to not get involved at all because you think it's a big chore. Instead of thinking that you have to be an activist, do this instead. Understand you don't have to be an activist. You can just learn, and that is enough. If education is all you're doing, that is wonderful. The 7th mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is having fear of connecting with other people. It is a mistake to not make connections with other people, especially in truth and reconciliation. Some examples of this could be if you're afraid to talk to other people about residential schools. I understand it can be awful, challenging thing to talk about. And if this is you, then download the guide that I've linked below on how to talk about Indigenous residential schools. Some of the risks of avoiding connecting with other people about your truth and reconciliation efforts are that you can extremely limit your experiences and your impact. Truth and reconciliation is all about talking to people, feeling heard, helping others, and building relationships. That's what we're trying to do. So instead of avoiding connecting with other people, do this instead. Join an online community if it's easier. Talk to people who you're most comfortable with, or educate yourself more so that you are more confident when you are entering into social situations. Now on to number 6. The 6th mistake you might be making in your truth and reconciliation efforts is shaming people for being colonizers or for being ignorant. For example, if you're mad at non-Indigenous people, or if you're getting frustrated or angry towards people who don't want to learn the true history, this is a mistake. And the risks of shaming people for being colonizers or for being ignorant is that it can make you feel negative and dark and prevent you from being able to stay in a healthy, positive mindset. Now, instead of shaming people for being colonizers or for being ignorant, do this instead. Have compassion and understanding for why the people are the way they are, and let them live in their own world. Anytime I encounter an adult who is completely ignorant and unaware of the history of Canada with Indigenous people, I really try to approach them with compassion and be understanding that they were lied to in the most crucial and developmental years of their life, or their school years, right? Now that's hard as it is. So the 5th mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is participating in the trends and not educating yourself on the real history of Canada and the United States. This could mean wearing an orange shirt around without really knowing why. Risks of not educating yourself on the real history invalidates the message of Orange Shirt Day and Every Child Matters. If you're participating just out of a trend and it's meaningless to you, this can be very damaging. So try not to make this mistake. Instead of focusing on the trends of wearing an orange shirt, do this instead. Watch this video right here on what is Orange Shirt Day. We've got other videos to educate yourself on the history as well. Now, the 4th mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is pretending that you're Indigenous if you know for a fact that you're not. It is so important to be authentic and honest about who you are. This is a difficult subject because sometimes people feel a strong connection to Indigenous heritage, but they are 100% of settler background, and that's okay. But saying you are Indigenous when you know full well that you are not is not okay. Some examples of doing this is claiming that you're of Native heritage. So claiming that you are of Native heritage is bad if you know that it's false and that you made it up. Some major risks of pretending that you are Indigenous if you know that you're not is that it removes all of your credibility in any relationship that you ever have because you're lying, right? Instead of pretending that you are Indigenous, if you know that you're not, do this. Be an ally and be honest with yourself about who you are. Your true authentic self is always the best way to be a good person. Now to number 3, the 3rd mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is not using Indigenous cultural teachings to help you be resilient. Teachings such as smudging ceremonies, medicine wheel, sacred medicines, and the 7 grandfather teachings, and so much more are right at your fingertips on our YouTube channel and on the Tribal Trade Co website. Not leaning into Indigenous cultural teachings is a mistake, and here's why. Indigenous teachings can help you to be really resilient, and not doing so disconnects you from the culture. You can experience setbacks from negative conversations and not be able to overcome them. It also makes the journey more fulfilling, so you would be missing out on that fulfillment by really learning about the beautiful and healing powers of Indigenous cultural teachings. So instead of just focusing on the history and the facts, actually lean in on teachings such as smudging, medicine wheel, 7 grandfathers, and more. So we went through the top 8 biggest mistakes, and now these are the final 2. These are the 2 biggest mistakes. They were very, very close to number 1, but in second place, the 2nd biggest mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is focusing too much on the truth and not enough on reconciliation. Getting stuck in the truth is easy to do, but it's dark, so you can't just focus on the truth for long periods of time. It actually doesn't take that long to learn the truth of the history of Indigenous people in Canada. So learn it quickly and move on to reconciliation to help your mental health. The risks of getting stuck in the truth and not focusing enough on reconciliation is that it's a very negative headspace to be in, and that can lead to anxiety and all kinds of negative emotions. Learn from videos just like this one, where you can learn the truth of the history of Indigenous people and then start to restore those relationships after you have learned about the truth. Don't just live there. Here is number one. The first mistake you might be making in truth and reconciliation is judging yourself harshly on how you're going about your truth and reconciliation efforts. Examples of doing this might be thinking that you have to move mountains or convince everybody, or that you have to be of Indigenous background to be involved, or telling yourself that you're not doing enough. A major risk of doing this is that you will create inaction for yourself. If you're judging yourself too harshly, there will not be a perfect action, and it will cause you to not do anything because you will feel that you cannot possibly do enough, or you can't do truth and reconciliation right. Another big risk of this is imposing your judgments on other people. So because you expect things from yourself, you're naturally going to impose those judgments or those expectations on other people too. And that's even worse, because then you're actually hurting others as well. So instead of judging yourself on your truth and reconciliation efforts, what you want to do is get a mentor, such as myself. Follow me, join the workshop series that we're hosting so that I could support you in your efforts. This will help you feel more sure and more confident. You could also practice gratitude, forgiveness, smudging, all of which I talk about on the channel and this YouTube channel, in my courses, and in the upcoming workshop series. So that's it for the top 10 mistakes surrounding truth and reconciliation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, or if any of your questions about truth and reconciliation were unanswered, if there's anything else that you want to share, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. Share this video with your friends if you liked it, and thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day.